And welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to continue my series on signals and slots. What this video is a redo of tutorial number 14, which talked about signals and slots and talked about boost bind and object tracking, and I was talking about some information that was incorrect on my part, and I got some advice from the developer of the Witty library, Dr. Keowen, and I do appreciate his help on that. And I'll try to do a do-over without mentioning too much of what I mentioned in that previous video. So let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate or create, if you haven't even seen the previous signals and slots video that I did, number 14, I'm going to create a new project in Komodo Edit, and we're going to call it Quit. And I'm going to give the project name Quit in Komodo Edit, and I'm going to save it. And we're going to yes to add the extension. And now we're going to create our project and get our project files. So let's click on the Witty project, and there are our files. And let's go ahead and run CMake in advance so we can go ahead and have that out of the way, and that'll go ahead and get us started. Okay, now what we're going to do is go to the source file, and what I want to do in this tutorial is just show you how to use a global variable that can be called using signals and slots. Basically, your global variable will be your slot, and because it is a global variable and it is not connected to an object, which was really helpful in understanding that function is on its own. It cannot be tracked because it's not attached to an object. If we were to create a class and it had a method that we wanted to call, then when that object is created, then it would be tracked unless it gets deleted in advance. But as long as that object is alive, it can be tracked by the Witty library. Let's go ahead and do an example of just a global variable, which in this case does not need to be tracked. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this Witty label class or header file. I'm going to add a push button, and then that's it for our header file. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually create the button. So we're going to call this Witty push button, and we're going to call the variable button. And we're going to give it a name of Quit. So you'll see the text Quit. And we're going to call the Witty application the root container, which is a Witty container, and it connects the button to the browser. Now, once we have done that, now we want to create our function. And we're going to create the prototype at the top of the file, and we're going to just call it Quit. And it's going to take a parameter of a Witty mouse event. And basically that allows you to, as the name implies, use mouse events or click events like we have here. When we click our button, it'll generate a mouse event, and it'll trigger our slot and call our slot and perform whatever action is what we're trying to perform. In this case, we're trying to quit the application, which it really does not quit the application. It just quits the current session. But you could always do a refresh of the browser window unless you disabled that in JavaScript. And if you do a refresh, it would restart the session again. And again, this is just an example. So now we have the prototype at the top. We're just going to repeat it at the bottom, and this time we're going to type in a parameter for the Woody Mouse event, and we're going to call it, you know, a simple variable of type E. We're actually not going to use that event because all we're going to do is quit the application. And what we're going to use is the Woody application instance. Now you can either type it this way, and the Woody application instance is basically itself a global variable, just like this is a global function that can be used throughout the Woody application. And you can call methods like the quit event. That actually quits the application globally for, you know, for this particular user in this particular session. You can either type it up this way, or they actually have created an actual variable like this. It could be like this, but in this case I actually just want to use the full static method of Woody application instance. So once you have that, what we want to do next is we actually want to connect the button click event, or the signal, and the slot, which is in this case our slot is going to be the quit function. So we have button clicked because we're going to be clicking on the button, and call the connect to connect our signal to our slot, or connect our slot to our signal, I should say. And we're going to take the address of this function and just call quit. And now we're going to compile the application. Let's see if we have any errors. And again, one reason why this is not being tracked is because this method is not connected to an object. If we create a class and put this function into that object, then it would be a method connected to an object, and it would be tracked because you have to create an object, and an object is available for you to track it unless you delete it, just like you would create a, you know, like a pointer. So now that compiles, let's run the server. I'm not going to get a prompt because I've already created this before. Here's the server up and running. And now what we want to do is start Chrome. And here's Chrome. And we have localhost. And as you can see, there's our application. And what I want to do, let's see, I want to make this window a little bit smaller, so I'm going to drag it over here. Trying to see if I can, well, doesn't look like it's one. Okay, there we go. What I want to do is make it a little smaller. Okay, there's our browser. Let's make it a little bit smaller again. Doesn't have to be huge. And then as you can see, if you look, I don't know if you can see the mouse, but if you look, let's see here, you'll probably see me scrolling. So what happens, if you look towards the top, you'll see where it says Woody session created, and you'll see number sessions or number of sessions equal to 1. That means once we start the application, we have an active session for ourselves, which we are the user. If we click on quit, look towards the bottom, at the very bottom, you'll see Woody session destroyed, sessions equals 0. So that kills the Woody application. But because this is just a demo, all we really have to do is click on the refresh button, and once again towards the top, you probably can't see my mouse, you'll see the number of sessions is equal to 1. It's in the top right hand corner. But again, if we click on quit, the bottom left hand corner of this console window says the number of sessions is equal to 0. So that is basically how you would create a global function that is connected to that is actually a slot that is connected to your signal, your button signal. Button.clicked, that is the actual signal, and the slot is this global function called quit. Now you could also create a class that contained this method, and then you would create an object instance of, like, just for example, like our push button. This is an actual object. You would create a class, and you would create a button. It could be a pointer, or it could just be a regular variable. And then once you create that object, you get the address of that method. So if we create a class of, say, let's just say, for example, excuse me for that noise. But if you just create a class, and we just said class, let's just say, it's not class, but we just call it C, make a pointer called C. And for example, if we said, okay, we actually want to get the method that is associated with that class. If we create a method also called quit, we would do button clicked dot connect, and then you would give the address. And I might do another tutorial just showing you how to do that, but that's essentially what you would do. And actually, I think you would also have to pass in the actual object. But like I said, I'm going to do another tutorial on this probably to show an example. But for right now, just know that you can actually use a global function that is able to be used as a slot and connected to your signal. And I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.